from the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation, and today I'm joined by Tracey Sletten, who's a research fellow at Monash University. And today I'm going to be asking Tracey some questions about fatigue and the impact on nurses. Tracey, firstly I'd like to ask whether there's age factors impacting on sleep behaviour that should be considered for young nurses who might be in their early 20s.
If you're looking at new nurses coming in, one of the biggest issues they're going to have is that they aren't used to doing shift work at all. And it does take some time to understand how your body individually reacts to shift work and what tools you can actually put in place to help you to adapt to that shift work. In many cases, we actually think that we're going to cope better with shift work than we actually do. And it does throw our body around a little bit when we can't sleep so well during the day, for example, if we're having to work during the night. And so it does actually take some time for young nurses to work out when they sleep best and how they can structure their time away from work to maximise the amount of sleep that they can get.
Tracey, are younger people more resilient to the effects of fatigue than older nurses?
So this is something that we're learning more about, and at a younger age we tend to be able to adapt to changes a little bit more, so we can get more sleep at times that our body is not used to on many occasions, and we tend to get a better quality of sleep in most cases when we're younger. So we can adapt to the fact that we have to sleep at different times better when we are younger, but everybody still struggles regardless of their age. So every person really needs to learn what is best for them and when they're best able to sleep.
Tracey, sometimes we find young nurses or nurses not used to working shift work can sometimes rely on caffeine and high energy foods and drinks to help them feel alert during a shift. What are the potential risks of this?
Unfortunately, with people that drink a lot of caffeine, we can actually build up a tolerance to that. And so when you get to a point where you're drinking a lot of caffeine, it may not actually have as much of an impact as people would like to help them feel more alert. So I tend to recommend to only use caffeine as a tool when it is needed, when people are particularly feeling less alert and would like the help of caffeine to feel more alert. And I would also recommend not having a huge dose all at once. So we have some new research now that is showing that if you have a lower dose of caffeine and actually spread out when you have that caffeine rather than one hit at the start of your shift, for example, and expecting that to get you through the whole shift, you can have some lower doses of caffeine throughout your shift that can actually help you to stay more alert. And some people also tend to crave a lot of those highly processed, very sugary foods during their shifts and think that's going to actually help them stay more alert. And particularly, for example, if people have caffeine in very sugary drinks, that can actually have a negative impact because they are getting that caffeine in their system. But there's also a lot of sugar that they're taking in at that same time, and once that is metabolised, you'll actually find they can often feel worse. So having caffeine without the sugary drinks is actually more helpful.
So what are the impacts of shift work on metabolism and digestive health?
So one of the largest impacts of shift work is the disruption to our circadian rhythms. So the fact that we are needing to be awake at night, for example, when our body is actually biologically built to be sleeping, and then also trying to sleep during the day when our body wants to stay awake. But that problem with being awake during the night, when our body is really misaligned with the timing of when we should be taking food and eating food and drinks throughout the night, when our body isn't necessarily prepared for that, that can have side effects. And there is quite a bit of research now that is demonstrating that there is a negative effect on metabolism. And there's a lot of research that's looking at the responses in glucose levels and glucose metabolism, and looking also at lipid metabolism as well. And so we can have a negative effect where there is some research that's demonstrated that we can actually take our bodies into a pre-diabetic state by having a lot of food at the time that our body is not prepared for that.
So Tracey, what advice would you have for nurses required to work shift work in terms of diet and exercise?
In general, I recommend, as difficult as it is when working shift work, just trying to continue a nice balance of diet and exercise. So quite often when you are sleeping at the wrong time and working at the wrong time, you can feel more tired and not motivated to prioritise good diet and exercise, but it is actually very beneficial for people who are doing shift work to try and keep that balance. So continuing a nice balance of good diet, of as much exercise as you can actually put in there, but obviously you need to prioritise getting sleep when you aren't working as well.
Thank you so much for your time today, Tracey, and your insights that you've provided around fatigue. If people want to know more or find out any more information, do you have any resources that you could recommend?
Yes, there's two fantastic resources from sleep experts in Australia, and one is the Australasian Sleep Association and the other one is the Sleep Health Foundation. So going to either of their websites, I think they'll provide some really useful information. There's fact sheets for shift workers, for napping, for the effects of caffeine or the use of caffeine, etc. So there's a lot of really useful resources on those websites, and I'm sure they'll